Hey guys, welcome back. I can't believe we only have a few more days left of the 30-day challenge. Today I want to talk about stress management techniques. And more specifically, I want to talk about how to become stress proof. Because we can't always eliminate stress from our lives. Stress is always going to happen. There's always going to be things going on, events around us. We can't control everything, but what we can do is we can become a little bit more resilient so we can better handle stress. Now, why is this important for this goal, quitting porn, quitting masturbation? Because with this goal, as well as many others like quitting alcohol or any other bad habit, stress is something that pulls us to find relief. Our brain is wired, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in our training. Our brain is wired to help us avoid danger. And it responds in a primitive way where it tries to find relief in the quickest way possible by default. So if you're stressed and there's some things going on, and we'll talk about how you are stressed. Like nobody gets away from this. Very few people have learned how to deal with stress effectively. Almost everybody suffers from it. What we'll talk about in this training is how your body seeks out pleasure in order to eliminate stress. So you release a bunch of stress hormones and your body and your brain grab at the quickest thing possible to try to do some damage control. It's a poor stress management technique because your body's using the things that are not good for you, that are easy to access, to try to manage and cope with stress. And that's where this whole concept of using addictive things and why things become addictive, because they are the go-to for dealing with stress. So let's jump into the training and we'll get right into all of this. And I'm going to give you really quick tips and actions you can take. I'm actually going to give you a lot of actions you can take. And what I'm going to recommend you do is, even if you just take one of what I'm about to share with you and implement it, it's going to reduce your stress load. It's going to reduce your cravings when it comes to this habit. The more you reduce your stress and you deal with it, the less likely you are to need to escape or find relief through porn, through masturbation, or any other thing that's not good for you. So what I want you to do is try at least one of the techniques that I'll teach you. And most importantly, get your device ready, whether you're on your computer or your phone, and get ready to screenshot a bunch of different tips, because I'm just going to have them loaded up and I'll talk about them really quickly, and we'll do like a rapid fire of things you can do. The whole thing with this, there's so much information about stress out there in the world. I just want this video to be very precise and give you exactly what you need to just implement, without all the too much of the science or any of that kind of stuff, because you can look that up later. I just want to give you actions you can spend as little time and energy on and just implement to make the biggest difference. All right, so let's jump into the training. I hope you enjoy. So today we're going to talk about stress management techniques, becoming stress proof. That's the name of the game. Stress is the number one reason why most people turn to porn and masturbation. It's a form of relief, a form of escape. It's the brain and body's way of protecting itself, which I'll talk to you about shortly. Let's get right into it. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover our goals. We're going to talk about how stress is our friend, which is conventional to what you might think. We're going to talk about how chronic stress is the issue. There's a variety of stresses, and we're going to talk about chronic stress. We're also going to talk about the 3 factors that contribute to stress and things to do. These are the quick actions, and this is where I want you to get your phone ready and start taking screenshots so you can save this. And all I want you to really do, my biggest goal for you, is to simply try one of these things out. By simply doing even one thing that I mention here, you're going to reduce a percentage of your stress load, which is going to reduce a percentage of your cravings. So again, you do everything in here, you're probably not going to have cravings. You're going to be a master at managing stress. So I'd encourage you to try and do as much as you can, but at least one thing is all I am asking for. And let's get right into it. So the goal in this training here is to help you better understand stress and implement specific strategies to better manage it and become more resilient towards it. thus becoming stress proof. Like I mentioned earlier, you can never eliminate stress from your life. That is a myth. Stress is always going to happen. There's always going to be a traffic jam or, something annoying at work that happens or an earthquake. There's always going to be stress that we cannot control. All we can do is manage how we respond to it and build up our resilience to it. So I hope you find this training helpful. Let's get into it. So to summarize really briefly, our reptilian brain has evolved to seek the quickest form of pleasure in order to attempt to clear stress hormones, which, if left in our system too long, becomes damaging to our cells and brain function, our entire system function, to be honest. Here's the thing. When something stressful happens in your life, even if it's the tiniest thing, stress hormones flood your brain and your bloodstream. And these stress hormones, if left too long, become damaging. They can actually physically destroy your cells. They can cause brain damage. They can cause a lot of different issues. So what your body does in an attempt to protect itself is it tries to reach for the quickest thing that'll give you a boost of pleasure, because pleasure releases good hormones which clear out stress to a certain degree. So that's kind of the gist of what's going on here. So stress is actually a friend. Stress is a survival tool. And this is called acute stress. And I'll explain a little bit more about this. It's important to understand there's really only two forms of stress we're going to talk about: acute stress and chronic stress. Really quickly though, this is the flood of chemicals and hormones that gets us to take action when something happens around us in our environment. That is acute stress. Once you complete the action, stress clearing hormones are released and the cycle of stress and response is complete. I'll explain really clearly what that means with a great example of running upstairs. So let's say you see a flight of stairs in front of you, all right? You're standing at the bottom, and here's what happens. You look up at the top of the stairs and you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. And your brain releases all these different stress hormones, which are like cortisol, adrenaline. And what that does is it pumps you up. It gets you motivated to tackle the stairs in front of you. Then what happens? You take action. You run up the stairs, you get to the top, and then what happens? You complete the action. And then you feel great because you ran up the stairs and you got to the top. You feel great. So what happens? Feel good pleasure hormones are released, and that clears out the stress hormones. So the whole cycle was starting at the bottom, taking action, running up the stairs, and then finalizing and feeling the reward of completing running up the stairs. So that's sort of like a normal, healthy stress cycle. Stress is our friend. If we didn't have stress, we wouldn't have the motivation to get started running up those stairs, and we wouldn't have the drive to run up the stairs. It would be completely missing. And this is a problem with people with adrenal fatigue. People who have been overstressed for too long are no longer able to even feel it anymore, and then they get depressed and they get demotivated, and then they can't do anything, or they're overwhelmed easily. I don't know if you've ever experienced that yourself, but that's common for people who suffer from what I'm going to get into next, which is chronic stress. Now, this is the enemy. Chronic stress is when stress overstays its welcome and isn't fully cleared. It lingers and it causes damage, and it breaks down our system bit by bit, slowly killing us. Wow, my speaker just about exploded as I said that. But that's the reality of what's happening. So chronic stress is a modern day epidemic. Most of us are living in a perpetual state of tiny stressors that are never cleared. And I'll give you a great example of this. A great example is when you're stuck in traffic, all right? So here's an example of chronic stress. So you're in traffic, you're backed up, and now here's what's going to happen. You don't have, all your stress hormones are kicking in because it wants to take action. It wants to launch you into some sort of action and completion. but you're stuck in traffic, so there's nothing you can do. So what happens? You start to get angry, you get infuriated, you start yelling, maybe you're swearing or you're hitting your thing. Now here's a funny part that happens that makes the situation even worse. You start ruminating and thinking about how angry you are, and you're dwelling on it while you're stuck in traffic, and no completion takes effect. You're ruminating, you're thinking, and maybe you're even thinking about stuff that's happened to you years ago, and now you're pissed off and you're thinking about things that happened when you were younger, and then you were thinking about what happened the other day. And there's no completion. You're still stuck in traffic. So here's where that's chronic stress, when stress does not have the opportunity to properly clear. And this is the modern epidemic, because in the past, 10,000 years ago, if you were attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, you could deal with it. You just fight the saber-toothed tiger. And if you win, you get to go back to your tribe with like new furs and, I don't know, saber-toothed tiger meat. And then they would celebrate you, and there was a huge reward, and you'd get 40 virgins. That was 10,000 years ago. Or the alternative was you die, you lose the fight. But these days, now we can dwell on things because nothing really kills us, and often we haven't learned how to celebrate rewards and completion. So we end up in this cycle of not getting ahead, ruminating, and chronic stress builds up. So that's why it's the modern epidemic. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's a good example there. If you have any questions, comment below. Let's move on. Here are the 3 factors we need to deal with in order to get through this. The 3 factors contributing to chronic stress are your diet, your lifestyle, and behavior. So those are the 3 main categories that we need to master in order to effectively deal with stress, clear stress, and become stress-proof, building resilience. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into all of this with things to do. And I want you to get your phone ready to screenshot some of this stuff because it's going to go by quickly, and I'm just going to go on and on about it. And it's in no particular order. I'm sorry, but I was in a pinch of time to get this done, and it's in no particular order. So I'm going to be giving you tips on diet, lifestyle, and behavior in random. So that's going to be fun. So here's what we want to do. Let's jump into things. The very first step I want you to take before you do anything, if anything, you leave with this one action. Watch the documentary Portrait of a Killer. Type it into YouTube. It's free. It's like a 45-minute or 60-minute documentary from the 80s or 90s. And it's about this guy who devoted his whole life to studying stress. And he paints the perfect picture of the modern epidemic. There aren't very many tips in that, but it's just pure education, and it'll get you thinking differently about stress. So watch that documentary, if anything, from this entire training. The next thing I want you to do is consider a couple of things. So we want to improve something called emotional regulation. And the way we do this is through journaling and meditating and mindfulness practices. All right, what is emotional regulation? Well, basically, when something happens to you, it's how you emotionally react to it and how you throttle yourself from getting extremely escalated or de-escalated. So it has to do with working through your emotions, all right? You might see this where if somebody has poor emotional regulation and something happens, they just go into like a fit of rage and they just can't control themselves, and it's just like wildfire. Emotional regulation is your ability to work through and deal with the things that happen to you. All right. And the best ways to do that is through a form of journaling, like 2 minutes, just do a quick journal each and every day, do meditation every day, and do mindfulness practices. Mindfulness is just fully getting present. For example, if you're listening to music, you fully listen to every note. If you're eating food, you actually taste the food instead of scarfing it down. Those 3 things are going to help you boost your emotional regulation capacity so you can handle stress better. All right. The next thing you want to do is learn to disengage your emotional brain by doing something immediately after something stressful happens or something pisses you off. A great example of disengaging your emotional brain is switching tasks completely. Don't just sit there and do nothing and be like, okay, well, something really bad happened and now I'm just going to sit and dwell on it. And I'm going to relax. No, that does not work. What you want to do is disengage your emotional brain. This is a tactic, a tool, a technique, by switching tasks. Go exercise. That's the best thing you can do because it'll immediately get you to stop thinking about it and it'll switch your mindset so you can actually start clearing stress hormones. So go and take action, go exercise, or you could try doing a form of meditation, although I wouldn't really recommend that for if there's like a major thing that happened to you and you're really angry. The other thing you can actually do is switch your brain to use spatial awareness and play a game like Tetris. That is one other way to disengage the emotional brain and switch you over to a different part of your brain so you're not dwelling and not getting overly stressed. Here is the giant list of a couple things. There's going to be a couple of screenshots like this, so just screenshot it as you wish. So here are some quick tips, all right? Exercise, but no more than 40% of your VO2 max. VO2 max is like if you start sprinting, 100% of your VO2 max is like you're gasping for air and you feel like you're going to die. Don't do that, actually, because that kind of exercise, that high level extreme exercise actually creates more adrenaline and cortisol. And if you're already dealing with stress and chronic stress issues, which if you're in this goal, you are, if you're dealing with that and you add more extreme exercise, you're just adding more cortisol and adrenaline. So there's a certain point where you're getting a diminishing return on your exercise. So what is 40% of your VO2 max? Well, that's light. That's basically weightlifting, nothing too taxing on your heart. Maybe, an hour walk or a jog or something like that. This one is tricky because I know guys that have been running marathons and they're in the fitness industry and they compete and they just go nuts with exercise, and then they wonder why they can't quit porn and masturbation because their stress levels are just maxed out. There's just no way for them to calm down enough to actually find a way to heal. The other thing you want to do is tame chronic inflammation. And the way you do that is you eliminate alcohol and you consume at least 100 grams of probiotic yogurt every day, and turmeric if you can. So what these three things do is it removes the basically alcohol. This is the funny thing. Alcohol creates these tiny micro tears in your gut. And what happens is food and other crap leaks into your bloodstream from your gut. And what that does is it causes inflammation. And you may not even know that you're inflamed, but if you're dealing with stress and you're chronically overstressed and you're overwhelmed all the time, then you may be suffering from inflammation. So you want to reduce that. And if you eliminate alcohol, you'll find your stress load goes right down. Your body has a fighting chance to get over the stress and clear it out. Also, probiotic strengthens the lining of your stomach and your gut and has a whole bunch of other things that work in your benefit in order to reduce inflammation. And turmeric has been proven to reduce inflammation. So you can do more research on that, on how to reduce inflammation, but those are really quick things you can do today to immediately give you results. And on the alcohol side, I'm a huge fan of no alcohol. Been off alcohol probably 10 years now. What I recommend with no alcohol is if you have even one shot of tequila, it's enough to create inflammation, to create a micro tear in your gut. So that's why I say just avoid alcohol entirely. You don't need it. The other thing is talking about insulin resistance, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but all you need to know is if you drop the excess visceral fat around your stomach, you're going to increase your insulin resistance and sensitivity so that you do not become overly stressed. The next thing I want to talk about is boosting your motivation, pleasure, and reward systems by dropping porn, masturbation, and other drugs and stimulants. Basically, go into a dopamine detox. And what happens is you're pulling out all these things that are bombarding your senses, your brain, your receptors. It's constantly bombarded by all this stuff that you throw at it, like porn and other stuff. When you eliminate those things, you give your brain a chance to restore and heal, and your pleasure sensors and everything come back into its regular mode that it's supposed to be, and you'd be amazed how sensitive that is. So then the littlest things in life make you feel more pleasure and more motivation, and that helps big time in regulating your stress. Now here's a cool one. Listen to binaural beats 30 minutes a day. All I'm going to say is go onto YouTube and type in binaural beats and you'll get it. And you can listen to it as you sleep or whenever you want to relax. All you need to know is there's two types of binaural beats: delta, which is to help treat anxiety, and theta, which is for relaxation. So what I would recommend is choose theta by default while you're working on this. And if you do suffer from anxiety, you can try delta as well. But play around with binaural beats at least 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day. You also want to drink matcha. That's the Japanese green tea. I'm in love with this stuff. Go over to Starbucks, get yourself a matcha green tea latte. It is phenomenal. And that is a great replacement for coffee. Matcha has been known to bring you into focus. It has been known to help in many ways. And that's why many Zen masters and Japanese monks, as a ceremony, they'll start with matcha before they get into prayer or other things. And so, yeah, it has a really big impact on your stress. And it is a great replacement for coffee because coffee can be a little wild. Again, we're going to jump back into, oh man, I duplicated it. Ignore that line, insulin resistance. Let's move on to do deep, meaningful work. Get into flow states if you can. All right. So that's a huge. Flow states are when you're doing something like video editing or something you're passionate about and you lose all sense of time and space and you're so deep into that task. That is meaningful. If you can do more of that, you're going to deal with stress much better. The other one is don't dwell or ruminate on things, especially during a stressful event. There's a lot of times where we'll just dwell on something forever and it just needs to go. It needs to go. Let it go. I did a whole video tutorial on YouTube. You just type in 1000 life lessons, ruminate, and you can watch my entire tutorial where I rant about how to not dwell on things. That's a skill. All right, here's the next screen. You can screenshot this as well. I want you to disconnect from technology for at least an hour a day. It doesn't have to be at bedtime, but maybe if you're at the gym or you want to do a hobby or you want to listen to music or read a book, just avoid technology for at least an hour. We're way too glued to our devices these days, and it can help to just take an hour a day off. Not only from the standpoint of blue light, but other things as well. It's a form of stimulation. Engage more of your senses. You can actually, if you're angry or you go through an episode that's stressful, you can smell lemons for a few minutes, and that will actually disengage that emotional brain we were talking about earlier. So smelling lemons, you can even go get lost in nature and just hear the sounds of nature or just look at it. Basically tap into your senses, and that will eliminate stress and help you become more resilient. Also, switch your mindset from being part of a tribe. Switch your mindset to being part of a tribe. Go with them instead of against them. So much of our stress at work or with friends or family comes from this battle with them. They are wrong, we are right. It's us against them. That is just unnecessary stress. If you can turn your problem around and see yourself as being integrated and on the same team, like you guys are all working together, that is going to make a huge impact on how you handle stress. So really see the world working for you, not against you. By default, we all take on this kind of victim role where everything's happening to us, but no way. If you can train yourself to see the world working for you, that's going to be phenomenal to help you deal with stress and become more resilient. Another thing is to just help others for no reason. Just start giving of yourself to others. And what this does is it supports the above belief that the world is a good place and the world is working for you. So you can actually train yourself to think that way, and it's super important. The next thing you want to do is boost oxytocin. That's the love hormone. That's what we're all chasing. That's why porn is so addictive, because it artificially gives us that. But here's what I want you to do. Go watch the social needs video training that I've got released here, which is on the 6 core needs. I talk about the social category. That covers everything you need to know about boosting oxytocin naturally. The next thing I want you to do is actually smile more. How often do you just take a pause and smile? By smiling more, you start to create the addictive habit of positivity, and you break the negative habit of negativity, which is also very addictive. So just simply smile more, catch yourself, set a timer on your phone to do that. A reminder every day, like smile for 30 seconds. You'll feel great. I'm smiling right now. The next thing is you can look up EMDR therapy. I personally have never tried this, but apparently it's really good for helping you reduce post-traumatic stress disorder, which is the thing that happens when something major happens in your life that you don't deal with and you don't process properly. So anytime an event challenges your worldview, like if you're just a regular old human being sipping coffee all and reading books, and then you see like a person get shot, then you that challenges your worldview of things. It's not rainbows and butterflies anymore. And when your worldview is challenged, you are open to post-traumatic stress disorder, which comes with a whole whack of crazy symptoms like brain fog and anxiety out of nowhere and all this crazy stuff. YouTube EMDR therapy to learn how to process and heal yourself from post-traumatic stress disorder. All right. The other thing, which is really wild on the physical side, try fasting. Try going into a caloric deficit. This has been proven to increase your insulin sensitivity, which was one of those first tips. And it has been proven to also help you in many different ways in dealing with stress. It builds a stronger immune system, and it helps you in so many ways. And it cuts out excess fat, which is known to make it more difficult for you to deal with stress. So the heavier set you are, the more fat you have on your body, the harder it is to deal with stress. So tune up your body clock. So this is more about kind of like getting sleep and rest. So reset your crazy and hectic lifestyle by resetting your sleep cycle. If you're an avid partier, you're up every night like till 2 a.m. partying because you really need that social fix. Like that's not really the best for you. Ideally, you want to sleep between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. There is a lot of teachings and education about that, but that's the body's natural prime time to get the best rest. And chemically, it releases the best amount of sleep hormones during those times. So try and cater your life around that if you can. Also, try and get as much sun as you can. Get 30 minutes of sun, preferably in the morning, at least 3 times a day. And then also wear blue blocking light glasses and do no electronics before bed. Try and take a warm bath. So all of this is actually to get your sleep hormones in check with your melatonin levels and all of that. That's what this tip is for. It's to reset everything so that when you do sleep, your body is more in recovery mode. So it's like sleep is one of the only ways to really wipe out stress if you do it properly. So really important to tune up your body clock so you get proper sleep. Next thing is obviously treat inflammation. Again, I gave you some tips on that. And if you treat inflammation, it can help with depression too, which is kind of cool. Here's a fun one. Do more of what brings you pleasure and joy, and try and choose healthy things to get pleasure and dwell on pleasure, because the more positive things you do, the more your brain gets rewired to be more positive. And when you do pleasurable things, hey, all right, now we're clearing stress hormone. So that's what we want. Practice getting closer. I don't know what I mean by that, but I mean by actual relationships, face to face, really important. Again, go to that training video I put out about the 6 core needs about the social category, and that'll explain it further. Practice gratitude, obviously, it should be a daily practice, a prerequisite for human beings, always looking at the good in things. Align your actions with your goals and beliefs to eliminate cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is when you believe something, but you do something else. And that space, that separation, that out of alignment actually makes it really difficult to deal with stress. So Figure out what you value in life and get on path with that. Try and be in perfect alignment and in congruence. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water and we'll continue. Another thing is to write things out that you're proud of about yourself. That kind of pushes you into this positive mindset as well. Have a growth mindset. Think of abundance and the world as your oyster. Have a high self-opinion. So when you start writing things you're proud of yourself, having a nice opinion of yourself and you seeing yourself highly, that is really powerful to clear stress and to make you stress-proof. Train for optimism. This actually takes practice because by default, going back to the ancient days, we're always on the mode of negativity and the mode of seeking out flaws. And the reason for that is back in my day, when we had to fight saber-toothed tigers, basically everything was a threat back then and you could die. But that's why our brains, by default, if not trained, goes to criticism and analysis and looking at the negative and looking at what's wrong in the world. Our brain does that by default out of a primitive state. We need to outgrow that and train our brain to look for optimism. It doesn't happen naturally. When you do that, you will handle stress better and you'll clear out stress hormones that have been lingering too long. Here's a fancy one. Practice self-efficacy. What the hell is that? It is the belief that you are able to succeed and have the capability to reach your goals. This one's huge. This takes training. This takes a lot of practice. It doesn't come naturally. So just keep that in mind. All right, we got through it. Woo! Here's what I'm going to say. Final words. Resilience is the art of bouncing back. That's what this is all about. It's about bouncing back. When shit hits you, you bounce back, you get up. And the better you get at all these things I just mentioned, the quicker you will bounce back and avoid chronic stress. Here's the secret. The secret of navigating our complex world, rocked with setbacks, shaken with trauma, and exhausted with the daily grind of work, lies with a single concept. And here it is. Elasticity. Bet you didn't guess that. Here's the thing. All rubber bands have an elastic limit. They keep springing back unless you stretch them beyond this limit. This training that I've shared with you, these tips have shown you how to increase your elastic limit so you can keep bouncing back, becoming stress-proof. That's it, you guys. Quick summary. We talked about how stress is your friend. We talked about how I want you to take at least one thing from this training and try it. And we talked about acute stress versus chronic stress. We talked about the factors, diet, all that stuff that lead and contribute to stress that we need to manage, and things to do, which I hope you screenshotted all those things. There's a bunch of them. That's it. All right, guys. So happy you could join me on this training, and I look forward to working with you more. Let's get into the next video tomorrow. This one was a big one, so digest that and enjoy. We'll see you next time.